This is Joe Oldenbrook. I drove truck for some years and I own Oldenbrook Trucking, which is located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm currently serving on the board as president of Highway Connections. Because I used to drive truck, I understand a lot of the problems that truck drivers face on a daily basis. I have a heart that wants better options for the drivers. Highway Connections begun in 1974. We put free Bibles in truck stops across the United States. We have distributed 1.5 million Bibles. We want to offer you a free Bible study so that you can engage God's Word on a deeper level. We know that God's Spirit and His words have the power to change lives for the better, and we are blessed to be a part of this work. Contact us at highwayconnections.org for more information. We are developing a weekly podcast and a daily devotional that can be emailed directly to your smartphone. Just contact us at highwayconnections.org. Thanks for choosing this Backhaul podcast. This podcast is brought to you because of Oldenbrook Trucking. If you are an owner-operator that is looking for a Christian-owned company that operates with integrity and transparency, check out Oldenbrook Trucking at oldenbrooktrucking.com. We'd love to hear from you. Once again, thanks for choosing Backhaul as your podcast to listen to. We are excited about engaging God's Word, and this week and for the next few weeks we have Randy Murphy from Call to Obedience joining us, and Randy will be talking about the power of forgiveness. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this is me speaking. When something was happening in my life and I was sitting on the road driving for 600 miles a day, I would let these things fester in me, and they would drive me, and I would have multiple arguments in and through my head on a mile-by-mile basis. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Randy has to say about the power of forgiveness.
Today I want to talk about something that is going to touch all of your lives, because it's something real that we deal with on a daily basis. There are two things that can eat us from the inside out, that can literally destroy us if we allow them to. That's guilt and bitterness. Those two things can just percolate inside of us and kind of eat like a cancer from the inside out. Here's the good news. The gospel addresses both of those. The gospel speaks to both guilt and it speaks to bitterness. Today, we're going to look primarily at this thing of bitterness that can grow in our life and how we deal with that through forgiveness. Let me start by telling you a story that illustrates how powerful bitterness can become in our lives. Larry came to me. He was struggling with panic attacks. He'd be driving down the road and driving down the 17, and just out of nowhere, he'd just get flooded with these thoughts. God is not real. Christianity is just a crutch. Life is meaningless. When we die, we just go to dust, and all that. That's all there is. And he just over and over, these thoughts would just flood him. And his hands would literally start shaking as he tried to drive down the freeway. So Larry'd become a friend of mine, and we're talking. I said, well, Larry, when did these panic attacks start? And he goes, well, probably about age 19. I said, well, what was going on in your life at 19 that would, prompt something like that? I said, I don't know. I don't have any idea. So will anything significant happen in your life? Not that I can think of. Any family stuff going on? He goes, oh, well, there's one thing that did happen. But let me back up to set the stage. At age 3, Larry was in a family of 5 little kids. His dad went next door to the neighbor's house, got in the middle of a domestic dispute, and the neighbor husband shot and killed Larry's dad and his wife. Tragedy. Little struggling family of 5. His mom turns to alcohol to try to numb some of the pain and the loss. The family fractures. And Larry grew up without a dad. But every time he thought about the loss, or when that was presented in whatever form it came, here was his encouragement. At least Dad died a hero. Larry loved baseball. Little League, he'd get up to bat. Did what every little kid does in Little League. First thing you do, kick the dirt off of their tennis shoes, right? Then they do something I won't demonstrate. And then they look up into the bleachers. Who are they looking for? Dad, right? Larry would look up, because Dad, you want Dad to see, I'm up to bat, Dad, you watching, right? No, Dad. But you know what? It was okay. It was okay. Dad died a hero. At age 19, one of his uncles pulled him aside at a family gathering, said, Larry, I think it's time you knew the truth. Here's what really happened. Your dad was having an affair with the next door neighbor lady. Her husband came home unexpectedly in the middle of the day, found them there in bed together, and shot him with one bullet and killed them both. Dad didn't die a hero. He died an adulterer. The bitterness, the anger, the resentment that just began to grow and flooded Larry's life began to consume him. And it manifested itself in these panic attacks. See, bitterness affects all of our relationships. Look at what Hebrews 12:15 says. It says this, see to it that no one comes short or misses the grace of God by allowing a root of bitterness to grow up that causes trouble and defiles many. See to it that you don't miss the grace of God. Do you realize we can miss the grace of God? We don't lose the grace of God in our life, but when I'm harboring bitterness and resentment, it's like putting my fist up like this between me and God. And I miss the experience of God's grace in my life. And it doesn't just affect me. Look at what it does. It causes trouble, and many are defiled. It will seep out of your life, and it affects every relationship. It affects your relationship with God. It affects relationships with your spouse, with your family, with the people you work with, and it affects you. The great news is the gospel addresses that. And I have to see that this blocks my relationship with God, and I have to face it. But Satan's counterfeit is for you to suppress it or deny it or to try to ignore it. And we can think, because this hurt, this sin against me that I want to get bitter about, because I put it out of sight, out of mind, then I'm okay. That's Satan's counterfeit. And see, this forgiveness affects all of us, this unforgiveness. It affects all of us. And it starts typically where you see it most is in a marriage. I have a couple, John and Kim, are going to come help me right now. We're going to demonstrate what happens over time in a relationship. Typically, people will come to me for marriage counseling at about 7 to 8 years in their marriage. And they come in and they sit down, and here's the big couch. He's on one side facing this way. She's on the other side facing that way. And they say, we don't love each other anymore. Well, here's what's happened. Over the years, here, John will be controlling. And that's like putting a brick on a wall. So then Kim responds by trying to avoid conflict. Then John gets angry about that. And then Kim says, well, if I can just keep John happy, life will be fine. Well, he resents that. He becomes judgmental. So she's trying to deal with the pain of what's developing in this relationship. So she just tries to forget it all and pretend it's not happening. Well, John continues to manipulate. Kim has to figure out some way to deal with it. So she has to withdraw. You see, if I stay engaged in relationship for any length of time at all, people are going to sin against me. They are. I am going to sin against my wife until the day that I die, and my wife is going to sin against me till the day that she dies. I better have a way of dealing with both of those sins. Minimizing isn't going to help. Getting defensive makes it worse. John develops bitterness, and Kim just tries to continue to find ways to escape. Now, we didn't pick John and Kim because these things are true of them. They just came up to help us, so can we give them a hand and say thanks so much? Thanks, you guys. So over time, this double-sided brick wall develops. And we're told time heals all wounds, right? How well is that working for you? That don't work. Time cements the two sides of this brick wall together. So when this couple comes in and they're saying, we don't love each other anymore, we never did, here's what they're really telling me. There's a brick wall between the two of us. John's on this side, Kim's on that side. I've tried to get over the wall, but it's too high. I've tried to get around the wall, but it's too wide. I've tried to get under it, but it's too deep. I've been trying to crash through the wall, but it's too thick. My head hurts from banging into this wall. I can't do this anymore. And some of you here this morning feel exactly that way. Your head hurts because you've been banging against this wall and you're just saying this morning, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Well, how do we begin to take this wall down that develops between us and another person in relationship? And it doesn't have to be your spouse. It could be your teenager. It could be your adult child. It could be your boss. Anybody that might sin against you. And that's probably everybody.
Yes, sir.
How do I begin to take the wall down? Well, it starts here. The first step in tearing the wall down is to begin to understand my own need for forgiveness. Listen to what Ephesians 2 says. Paul says this, and you were dead in your trespasses and sins in which you formerly walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, and the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. Among them we too all formerly lived in the lusts of our flesh, indulging the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and we were by nature children of wrath, even as the rest. Here's the deal. We are guilty before God, and Paul goes on to say in Romans 1 that God is going to pour his wrath out on all ungodliness and unrighteousness. Wow. That's what I deserve. Here's a Randy Murphy principle number 1. I deserve to burn in hell, and anything less than that's a pretty darn good day. See, that's what I deserve. I deserve the wrath of God. We're separated from God, and we're totally depraved, and we're in this helpless state before Christ where we're hopeless and helpless, and there's nothing we can do about it. We're dead in our trespasses and sin. Paul goes on in Ephesians to say, but God, who is rich in mercy. See, we're depraved. We're born that way. My daughter, Lynn, she's now 19. When she was about 3, she came walking out of her bathroom one morning, and she'd gotten into Janet, my wife's makeup. And she had this little tube of brown, I don't know what it was, foundation or something. I don't use it, so I don't know what it is. Anyway, she had like smeared it all over her face like this, right? And she rubbed it in her ears so much that her ears were totally caked with the stuff. And so I looked at Lynn and I go, Lynn, have you been into mom's makeup? And what was her answer? No. So I gave her a second chance. Okay, come on, Lynn, really? Have you been into mom's makeup just a little bit? And her answer? No. And I'm thinking, she's only 3. Who taught her to lie? Where did that come from? Did she go to lying school? Did her older brother teach her to lie? Where did this come from? We're born dead in our trespasses and sin, and we deserve the wrath of God. But you know what happens? But God, who's rich in mercy. See, God removes our sin. He paid the price in full to set us free through Christ, and Christ's death on the cross satisfies God's wrath. Instead of pouring his wrath on you and me, he poured it all on Christ, and that was sufficient. And now he declares us righteous and innocent before him, and he reconciles us to himself. That's the power of the gospel. So I desperately need God's forgiveness, and he's provided everything that I need to be forgiven. See, it starts there, because if I don't see my own need for forgiveness, I am not going to see any reason in the world to forgive this other person. Matter of fact, I don't want to forgive them. I want to rub their face in it. When they sin and against me and hurt me, I want to rub their face in it. I want to forgive them. So this thing is, the gospel is the work of God bringing back sinful men into fellowship with him by removing the very thing that alienated us. And that's what forgiveness is. So we deserve wrath. Instead, we've been forgiven. So here's the deal. The bottom line is this: the forgiven must forgive. Okay, if that's what we're supposed to do, what does it mean to forgive and what does it look like? Here's a definition that we put together that will help us with this, okay? Forgiveness is releasing an offender from my bitterness and or wrath they may deserve. Now, there's two key words. If you had this written down, I want you to underline. What do you think they are? First word. Releasing. Good choice. Yeah. Releasing. It's letting it go. Okay? Releasing them from it. No more obligation. What's the second word? Deserve. What do people deserve when they sin against us? They deserve our wrath. Right? So what forgiveness is releasing them from that. It's letting it go. And instead of giving them the wrath that they deserve, we're going to give them mercy and grace that they don't deserve. Isn't that exactly what God did for us? Instead of giving us the wrath that we deserve, he gave us grace and mercy that we don't deserve. So because I've been given what I don't deserve, I am going to give that to other people who don't deserve it either. The forgiven must forgive. Now, we got to understand a couple things. If that's what forgiveness is, let's talk about what forgiveness is not. First of all, forgiveness is not based on feelings. If I wait until I feel like forgiving my wife, guess when I will forgive her? Never. I don't ever feel like forgiving her. I want to rub her face in it. I want to hold it over her. I want to use it as a weapon against her. I want to feel justified in my hurt. I want to hold on to all of that. I don't feel like letting it go. There's a lot of things God calls us to do that we don't feel like doing it. I've pastored churches for over 20 years, and there's a lot of Sunday mornings, if I did what I felt like doing, I would not be going to church and preach a sermon. I would be out on the golf course. That's what I felt like doing. You say, but if I don't feel like forgiving, I'll be a hypocrite. Okay, you're either going to be hypocritical to your feelings or hypocritical to the truth. Which one are you going to choose? So I can't base it on my feelings and say, well, when I feel like it, I'll take the next couple months and I'll work on it, see if I can get to a point where I feel like forgiving. No. Forgiveness is a choice you make. Okay? Second, it's not minimizing or just forgetting it. It's not saying, oh, what they did is not so bad.
Wow, Randy, that was really interesting. I really never thought about it as it's not a feeling, but it's a choice to forgive. And I'm going to be honest with you, Randy, there's times that I just not feel like forgiving other people. So I'm really looking forward to part 2 where you unpack this just a little bit more for us. Once again, thanks for choosing Backhall as the podcast to listen to. We look forward to you joining us on part 2 of 3. Thanks for listening to this podcast. We hope and pray that God has spoken to you and revealed his Son, Jesus Christ. We'd like to hear from you. Please contact us at highwayconnections.org. Thanks. Have a great day and be safe.